Remind our listeners of the title of the Arganda podcast.
Where will these kids be in 10 years?
It's a
10
newish
years.
name.
Yeah, 10 years from now podcast.
That's right.
Yep.
Okay.
Right on.
So good to see you again.
Yes, thank you, Tracy. Thank you for being part of this. Tracy works with Mission Increase and coaches me and supports Arganda in that way, and we're so thankful for that.
So today, Ron, is a little bit of a different format for
Yes.
our audience. Often we start with some version of, I wish everyone could go to Uganda with me, but
Yes.
because we can't, you tell us what it's like. You take us there. Today is a more reflective conversation for us. We want to talk about things that you've learned and conclusions that you've come to about what you must do next.
Yes. So here we are recording this near the end of 2025, and, you know, we're always smarter a year from now than we are today. And so today we've learned some things over the last year, and I've made a list of 6 things that we've learned in the last year.
So 6, but also 4 that we must do. So it's a bit of a
Yes.
top 10 list for
Yep,
us.
it is.
All right.
Yep.
So here we go. We're going to talk first about the 6 things that you've learned, at least
Yes.
those that you've identified, because you are a learner. I know there are probably more than 6, but these are key for what God is doing through you
Yes.
in Uganda. So why don't you start with number 1?
These are foundational, and we're going to give just a helicopter view because I could talk about any one of these forever, but the first thing we've learned is that Arganda can transform entire communities.
You're seeing that in the 13 villages where you're working.
Yes, things are so radically different than they were before Arganda came, and everyone says that. Government officials and local villagers, children, everyone says that. So we realize now we can transform entire communities.
And in not just one way, but many ways.
Yes,
That's
and-
the transformation that you're talking about.
Yes, deep systemic change. And here's what we've learned. You know, Arganda is on the scale of, nonprofits. We're pretty small. But, people say, well, how can someone or an entity so small do this? Well, here's what we've learned is that our role is to connect various entities. There are a lot of entities out there that have tried to solve these systemic problems. And so there's government officials, there are law firms and legal, and there's parents and there's pastors and there's teachers, and everyone has tried and everyone has basically said, I'm throwing my hands up, it's not working. But what Arganda has done is taken the things that exist, created the one missing piece, and connected all of them. That's what we've learned.
So you're filling gaps and you're making connections, and those connections leverage the assets that are already there in the
Yes.
communities.
Yes, exactly. And so what isn't there before we come is the army of volunteers. And we learned that from our domestic violence success, where Esther and her team recruited Mankind Club members and Soul Sisters Club members in order to have conversations with perpetrators and then surround the victims. And that worked so well, we realized that entity was always there but wasn't organized. So we created that. When I say we, it's them, but we created that entity, and then we connect that with government officials, with law firms, with teachers, pastors, parents, and so on, and that's the secret sauce.
The connection is the secret sauce, and engaging people in their own communities to take ownership of the transformation.
Yes. And so, every nonprofit does good things as far as I can tell. And we would never, ever criticize another nonprofit. We're so thankful for every one of them. Okay, but a lot of entities have never thought about or have followed through with connecting all the existing entities. And so they settle for teaching classes or paying school fees or buying water filters or, hiding battered women in undisclosed places, and hoping that when they go back they won't get beat up again. Or they pretend, for example, that domestic violence isn't that big of a problem, so let's just help them plant gardens, or let's just help them
Focus on the kids or
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
And yet
And they need gardens, and they need kids,
Yes.
they need everything. And so we're not
Yes.
criticizing, but this is what we're so thrilled with. It seems like we have just found this key to success, and that is connecting the entities that are already there and creating the one that wasn't.
Well, number 2 on your list is an extension of that, because it really is something that you've learned about the people in the villages where you're working and their response
Yes.
to
Yes.
you and your approach.
Yes.
So talk about number 2.
Yeah, so number 2 really answers the question, why do you do this? And the one reason is the people in our villages, they're sick and tired of, chaos and dysfunction and violence and poverty. They don't know any other way, but they're tired of it. And so collective efficacy is powerful. See, when I say we, it's our medical teams and our
Yes.
other teams there. But when they come into a village and say, we want to help with medical, and we'll be here every week with our mobile clinic, and we'll do this and this, and then we come in and teach them how to start businesses, and then we come in, they at first are, questioning, why are you here, and how long are you going to be here, and what's your motive? But after a while,
Because they've seen people come and go.
exactly.
Yes.
But after a while, they realize we love them. We deeply care about them. And if a child comes with some disease or some condition where he's going to die or be crippled, we pay for surgery, which we've done 70 sometimes so far. And they realize we love them. And so they are sick and tired of it. And so they begin now to believe that things can change.
Well, what I also hear, Ron, is that your approach is not just to import what you believe is the solution,
Right.
but it's to collaborate with the community, with the villages, to
Yes,
listen
yes.
to their needs and to how they might take ownership in the transformation that you're all aiming for.
Exactly. And we got a list from our team of 9 things that tie people's hands. That's their expression. These people's hands are tied because of this, this, and this. And so they present it to us. And so, they've been thinking, and we've been thinking, and we set up a task force on our side of the ocean, and we brainstorm and come up with ideas and connect with them, and they say, well, let's try it. And so, yeah, it's their list. It's their, desire to change things. So the first reason that we do this is because they're sick and tired of it, and they're so thrilled when they see permanent change happening.
Well, that leads us to number 3 on your list, because you were warned that working with people in the villages where you're present could be problematic, but you have found something entirely different. Tell us about number 3, learning.
Well, a couple things that we were told: the police will never cooperate, and you have to have the law on your side. And the second thing is that people will drift, your team will drift from their vision, they'll fight with one another, they'll steal your money, and so on. And one person who had been a missionary there since the 60s told me, there are 3 honest people in Uganda, and they all work for me. Of course, he was speaking tongue-in-cheek, but he said, you'll have to be diligent in making sure that you have accountability systems and be careful who you hire. Well, here's been our experience. We have 18 employees right now, and these people are dedicated, they're honest, they love each other, they love the people in the villages, and they would do anything. We found out there are thousands of people in our villages who want a different life. And we found out there's hundreds of police officers. Of course there are corrupt police officers in Uganda. There's corrupt ones down the street from us probably, in our cities. But the ones who are honest and care outnumber them.
I think that's one of the biggest items on this list, because it evidences your interest in affirming people, taking ownership, and having your eyes open to the good that's already there, rather than coming in saying, we're here to fix everything.
Right.
We're the only people who know what to do. You're making it possible for there to be ownership in the people that you're serving. And I just applaud that.
Yeah,
and it's unique.
We see our role as giving them the tools, support, and proper accountability where they're holding each other accountable, and they just thrive. So, yeah, and the other reason we want to do this is because we're asking the question, where will thousands of children be in 10 years? We're looking at the long view, not next week. I mean, next week is important. Today's
Sure.
important. Yesterday was important. But in 10 years, what if we could help basically all the children, of course, if the children are prospering, the parents are involved and the teachers are involved, the schools are different. I mean, it affects everything. So that's why we do what we're doing.
All right, number 4. Our number 4 is about momentum. You referenced the importance of accountability in nonprofit structures. Sometimes nonprofits get to a point where they feel stalled or stuck. And I found you to be someone who always is ready to push through. And so your reflection in item number 4 is momentum.
Momentum. And when we first started, we started with 3 villages, about 5,000 people. And it was tough. It was tough to get their respect and realize we were there to help them. We weren't trying to impose anything and then we went to 6 villages and it was tough, and we went to 10.
Remind us when you started with those 3 villages.
Well, we started in January of 18, so it's coming up on 8 years ago. But when we went from 10 to 13, which was earlier this year, it was almost immediate that those 3 new villages just enthusiastically adopted everything. Help us set up one of those microbanks. Teach us financial literacy.
Because word is spreading from the other 10 villages.
Yeah, word
and
is spreading.
You've proven to be trustworthy.
Yeah, exactly. They know they can trust us. So we've got momentum, and now other villages are begging our team, can you come here? Can you come here? Can you come here? And so, yeah, we've got momentum. We have to deal with that wisely.
Yes, scale is challenging for nonprofits. But one thing that you're identifying is that there's interest and demand for what you're doing.
Yes.
Sometimes nonprofits scale too early and they haven't attended to the question of interest and demand, or even a waiting list, something as similar as, do you have a waiting list?
Right.
And
Right.
so
Right.
you're noticing that, you're paying attention, and that's a signal to you that growth and scale are appropriate.
Yep. And we don't measure our success by how many countries we're in. And I'm not criticizing those who do, because there are a lot of nonprofits say we're in 22 countries now, we're in 7. That's great. And if what they're doing is working so well, they're ready to do that, we'll go for it. But we don't measure that way. What we measure is permanent systemic change. And if we can get the formula for that with them driving it and supporting it and enjoying leading it, okay, then the day is going to come when we're going to spread, and it's going to be easy. That's the point of momentum.
Well, you're almost there, I think.
Well,
and you've learned so much. You've adapted, you've added with wisdom and discernment. And so the momentum that you're experiencing is definitely a signal.
Yeah, it's a signal for something's about to happen.
That something about to happen is in a lot of ways being influenced by women. Tell us about number 5.
Yeah, women are so powerful in any society, but they're marginalized there on this side of the ocean. In developing countries, we talk about inequality of women, and we should. But there, it's not inequality; it's enslavement. It's so treated so terribly. But get the load off their back, give them an opportunity, and women are just tremendous leaders. They're so committed. There's something inherent about the maternal instinct, or I don't know what it is, but they're so powerful. So some of our key leaders in our team are women. Esther and Rose and Join Us and and so on. But we are, and the other side of that is that I know ministries that only work with women. And I've had one of them tell me, we don't even allow men to come to the financial courses that we teach. We don't want any men in the room because women have had bad experience with men. Well, again, we're not criticizing that, but we want to help the men and the women together.
That's another example of what you were talking about in number 1. We want to bring people together.
Yes.
Be the connector.
Yes.
And so there's something to be said about focusing on one particular population Some focus only on the children.
Yeah.
And I think this is a good example of you and systemic change and systemic ownership and
Yep.
collaboration.
Yes.
Excellent. All right. Number 6 on the list of what you've learned.
Well, number 6 is kind of a wrap-up of these first 5. And Steve and I were having a conversation. We have a lot of conversations with other nonprofit leaders, and
Remind our listeners, Steve is your...
he's my colleague
Yes,
in
okay.
our office.
Yes.
And a couple old guys in our office, and Steve's the other one. And we were having a conversation by Zoom with a lady named Tabitha who leads a ministry in Uganda. And they've been going a lot longer than us, and they're doing very wonderful things. And her nephew lives in Bundi Bujo, of all places, which was thrilling to us.
Immediate
That's where we work.
connection.
Yeah. And, she was very delighted to hear that we're approaching our ministry by lifting the whole village up and changing things permanently, and then they're operating it and so on. And she said to me, and she brought up the names of some larger nonprofits and said they're not changing anything permanently. They come in and they do this or they do that, and 4 or 5 years later, when the sponsorship ends or the well isn't pumping anymore and they don't know how to fix it, everything is lost. And she said, but you guys are making permanent change. And so that hit us again.
In social science, it in some ways is the difference between outputs, meaning things we count, numbers of children in school, or numbers of meals that we've served, or numbers of classes that we've taught, or numbers of homes that we've built, or wells that we've outputs versus outcomes.
Yes.
Outcomes are longer term systemic transformation, and that's
Yes.
what you're aiming towards.
Yep, exactly. And so God has blessed us with generational systemic transformation at a level now that we're enticed to try for more, because more people will be blessed. We've got to try for more. And so those are the 6 things we've learned so far.
Before we talk about what you must do or what we must do together in terms of next steps, you're such a storyteller. Tell me a story that comes to your mind that is emblematic of maybe all 6 things that you've learned, or at least just one.
Well, we got a message this weekend from Esther, who runs our domestic violence, and the police have said that they don't hear very many calls from our villages anymore for domestic violence because the Mankind and Soul Sisters are in place and so on. But she said in one of our new villages, the Mankind Club had to call the police this week. We're always so sad to hear that, because it means a woman was hurt and so on. But she said the police came and they confronted the offender, and they took him to the police station, and he's now in the process. He'll be going through the court. And, in some cases when he's, one case they told us the man cried like a baby for 3 days, and they let him out as long as he did, and they might do that again, but it's not going to happen again. And so we were sad that happened, but happy that there was a system in place to make sure it doesn't continue to happen.
Because previous observations were that even if they called the police, nobody would come.
Right, yeah.
And this gets back to even number 1 again, which is you work with multiple entities to create this collective transformation. So the team had the backing of local law enforcement. They knew when they called, they would come.
Yep.
Steps would be taken. And that example, that rhythm, messages to everyone in the village.
Yeah.
Things have changed.
That's right.
And
Things are different here.
it's not just because Arganda's here to run the show.
Right.
You've set up systems, foundations, platforms where people can see we have options. Our hands aren't tied like they used to be.
Exactly.
Good.
It's thrilling.
Okay.
It really is thrilling.
Okay. So we've learned things. We have a story that illustrates the results of what you're doing. What are you thinking about now as your list of things that must be done? Ways you will go forward?
Well, number 1 is that God has given us unexpected success. We didn't start thinking we would solve domestic violence or keep girls from getting abused and change whole villages. We didn't think that, but this is where we've ended up. And so
Well, you started with medical service,
we
right?
started with medical service.
Yes.
And our goal was to stop unnecessary death. And we don't see much unnecessary death in any of our villages now because that van comes with medical supplies and medical professionals every single week, in some cases every other week now. And so, they teach classes and they join our wellness clubs and they get tools, and we just don't see that anymore. But here we are with this unprecedented success for a reason, and we believe that we would be unfaithful to the call if we just said, well, we've done our thing.
We did the medical thing. There's no more unnecessary death.
Yeah. Or even where we are now.
Yes.
We've got 13 villages, and wow, there's 17,000 people that are in a better place,
Enough is enough.
Enough is enough.
And you're saying, no,
I don't.
this is only the beginning.
It's only the beginning. That's number one.
Great.
Yep.
So we must keep going.
Yep.
Continue to be faithful. What about number 2? What is the second thing you feel conviction about?
Well, number 2 is a corollary of number 1.
Okay.
So we have to spread what we've learned much wider. And, that statement doesn't have a time frame on it or geographic parameter on it, but we can't stay where we are. So we have to spread it much wider. And where it goes from there, we're not sure. We're not sure. Early in our history, I had a coaching relationship with a guy out in the Midwest, and he said to me, "You won't recognize Argonda in 5 years."
That's true. That's true. Don't you think? I don't recognize it in 3 years.
Yeah, and I think it is true. And, that statement was so encouraging. But where would we be in 5 more years or in 10 years?
Well, I think that's what I'm observing is that you're grateful, and this process of reflecting on what you've learned is so healthy, and yet one of the conclusions I'm hearing is it's not enough. We're not satisfied, and we need to get ready.
Yep.
Part of faithfulness for you now is making sure that you have the internal infrastructure, the internal foundation to be ready to go to the next 13 villages.
Yes, yes.
And that's some work that needs to be done on this side of the ocean.
Right. And if anyone has read the book of Ezekiel recently in the Bible, there's a very haunting statement there where God is quoted here, and he says in Ezekiel 22, "I searched for someone to stand in the gap, but I found no one." And how many things have not been done that could have been done because no one stepped up and said, I'll take on Goliath, or,
Here I am, send me.
Yeah. And so that's where we feel we are is, I had one of our donors we talked on the phone about 2 weeks ago, and he says, "Why are you doing this, Ron? Really, seriously, why are you doing this?" He said, "Everybody I know your age is driving an RV around the country and, or flying to wherever, or, sitting and watching reruns of Dragnet or something. And why are you doing this?" And I said,
Why are you doing it, Ron?
And I said, I can't explain it except for I think it's a call or something, And we've seen so many lives changed, and literally thousands and thousands of lives changed. And with just what we've done so far, if we build this thing out correctly and we run the calendar forward 5 years or 10 years, I can't even guess where we would go. So that's the second thing is, we have to spread what we've learned.
All right. So the next thing that you must do is think about doing the impossible.
Well, it's a balance, and I'm not a business person, but everyone knows some businesses expand too quickly, and they end up, imploding because they didn't pay attention to their core business or their core. Walmart took them 8 years or something to get their second store when they first started, and then obviously they can scale pretty easily now at their scale. But we have to be cautious with this. So because we need to go deeper in some ways in the villages where we are. They're not perfect. I mean, My neighborhood's not perfect. It's pretty close to where I live, but it's not perfect. But it's not perfect there. We need to go deeper in our children's pathway, which Joyce is creating with her team, and they're doing phenomenal work. We need to go deeper with trauma healing. Everyone's been through trauma. We need to go deeper with addiction recovery. Esther tells us, Joyce tells us that many of the men, she says hundreds of the men, that before were not involved in church in any way are now going to church. And men are now joining these savings groups, which we call microbanks, because they want to know what's my wife doing with our money. And so they're joining, and children are going to church more than ever before. This is what they're seeing now. And so we have to go deeper where we are, but, how do we get the balance between going deeper and spreading to more villages?
Well, and that's where wisdom and discernment come in. That's why leading with prayer is so important.
Yep.
That's where your board comes in. All of that exercise in wisdom and discernment is so critical. And I think we're going to talk about how people can be praying with you.
Yes. Yeah,
Let's talk about number 4 first, and then we'll get really
Yep.
practical. What are we inviting people to do?
Well, number 4 is, I don't know why it's on this list in this order, except it's kind of a wrap-up of everything. And, we've had people, more than one, more than 10, people say, why are you trying to do so many things? Why don't you do you found success in the medical and stopped unnecessary death. I mean, do more medical clinics. And someone else says, well, you've done so well with domestic violence, just do that. And you could say that about everything. And so in a recent conversation, I asked the person who is a Bible person, not everybody is, and that's fine if you're not, but I asked him, do you remember the story of Nineveh, the Old Testament story of Nineveh? What happened there? It was a barbaric, chaos-filled, violence-filled city, and God taps a guy named Jonah on the shoulder and said, hey, go and talk to him, and he gets scared and heads the other direction, but the whole city turned to God. Do you think that story's true? Well, yeah. Well, do you think God is the same today as he was then? Would he be pleased if it happened in a whole village or a whole community?
Because God is good and merciful and compassionate.
I mean, maybe he's, there's the text that says you don't have because you don't ask. And so what if we asked, and what if the people there said, we'd like to give it a shot, and, we put our resources and focus and prayers toward that? Do you think God could do that? And it seems like he's doing it. See, he seems like he's doing it. And so we only do one thing in Arganda. Now, we can make a list, but we only do one thing, and that is we're transforming entire communities. That's our one thing. And the other Bible story for the people who are Bible people is Abraham looks out over Sodom, and God's going to destroy it because it's wicked and start over kind of like he did with the flood. And Abraham's like, please, God, don't do that. If there's 50 righteous people, would you spare it? And God says yes. And then it's 45, then it's 30. And, and he gets bolder and bolder and goes down to 10. Would you spare Sodom for 10 righteous people? And God says yes, but they couldn't find 10. Well, I thought of that number. And in every one of our villages, Esther went in there and recruited 5 men and 5 women who said, we're not going to let this chaos happen anymore. We're not going to let this violence happen anymore. There's 10 right there, okay? And then there's others that are built on that. Our children's volunteers are much larger than 10 now. So I think we're perfectly positioned for God to say yes to us the way he said yes to Nineveh. And we're just dumb enough to think he might do that. And it looks like he's doing it. So why don't we just ride that and trust him and do our best to find a way to make it happen? So anyway, that's the last thing on this list that we've learned is we have to try.
So as you try, what are you inviting others to do with you? How are you going to get from here to there?
Yeah, we have to be wise, and we have to be strategic, and we have to be appropriately bold. But, we're not geniuses. We have a saying, together we're a genius, when we get our heads together. And, but the first thing is we're establishing a task force to help us answer this question, where is the balance between going deep and going wider? And then what should our specific goals be and what steps do we need to take, what's missing, and how do we build our infrastructure here better, how do we build it over there. And so we're going to be creating a task force, and several of our board members have volunteered to be on it, but I'd like to open the invitation to anyone who might say, hey, I might want to be on that. Now, that's not for everyone.
Not for everyone, but it's open.
Yeah, it's open. So someone might say, sounds interesting, give me a call.
What I like about a task force model, and I say this with nonprofit leaders pretty frequently actually, is that a task force usually is very singularly focused. So it sounds like yours is for strategic thinking, for discernment,
Yes.
and also task force commitments are usually time delimited. It's not an unending commitment.
Yes.
It's a task force for a specific purpose. And so that makes it an easier yes for
Yes,
someone.
exactly.
Not everyone, like you said, but for a
And
few someones.
What I've told our board is we're going to meet for 3 meetings at 90 minutes each, and then we're going to evaluate and see if, if we have more to do, if it's productive, if you feel like you fit. So the initial commitment is 3 90-minute meetings. We'll do them by Zoom. If you live in our area, we might invite you to come and huddle up with us while we patch in other people, but 3 meetings for 90 minutes, and then we'll see where we go.
So it's approachable. Those that are listening and feeling prompted know what they're getting into, but it's not never ending.
Never. Yeah,
Yes.
That's
Okay. So number 2, what are you inviting others to do to get
everyone
from
can
here to
pray.
there? Yes.
Everyone can pray.
Yes.
And, if we ever needed the Lord before, we sure do need him now. So we welcome prayers. So everyone can do that. Not everyone can be on the task force, but everyone can pray.
So is there a guided way people can pray with you through your newsletter, for instance? They could listen to the newsletter and you communicate specific ways to pray. I find that as I interact with nonprofit leaders, the more specificity you can provide to the people who are praying with you, the more often they're going to pray.
Yep. Good.
We don't want to just be general and say pray.
Yep.
So they can come to you for specifics about how to pray and when to pray.
Yes, we need to do that better. For now, let me say that if you would pray that what God did in Nineveh would happen in Arganda's villages, God knows where to take it from there. So for now, that's a prayer you can pray.
Okay. Pray the Nineveh prayer.
Yep.
Outstanding. All right. Last thing.
Well, consider a significant gift. And significant is, different for everybody. It's different for everyone. But you know what it means, and whatever, if you say, I'd love to see this spread and go deeper and change a lot more lives, consider a gift that would reflect the depth of your commitment to helping this happen. And so, like I say, I don't know what that means. Some people give a lot, some people give a little, but consider a significant gift, whatever that is for you.
God is the multiplier.
Yeah.
God is the multiplier of resources.
Yeah.
He's the multiplier of prayers, meaning praying people. He's the multiplier of momentum, the multiplier of leaders and volunteers. So make a significant gift and know that God will multiply it.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Anything you want to say to conclude for today?
Well, some people say to me, isn't this too hard? And the answer is it's hard, but it's not too hard. It's not too hard. It's a lot easier to do one thing, help them with this or that or buy them this or that. But, the question shouldn't be, is it hard? The question should be, what are the lives that are changed? And what would honor God if this really happens more deeply and spreads? And so, I don't think about the hard question. I think about what's right and,
Faithful.
Yeah.
What's the faithful response?
Yep, exactly.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, feel free to contact me. My personal phone number is 360-624-7271. You can email me at rongladden@gmail.com. Go to our website. We have a new one coming out soon, but you can reach us through the website. Love to hear from you. Thanks for listening today, and come join the team in one way or another.
So today our podcast was about where kids will be. Thousands of kids will be in 10 years.
Yep.
And it's
Yep.
a reflection on what you've learned, what you must do, and what you're inviting others to do with you in order to change the answer to the question, where will these kids be in 10 years?
Yes. Exactly.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.